another person logging in, so just we'll give it a moment and we'll begin here shortly. Well, we have a lot of material to cover in the hour, so I'd like to begin. This is the Intermediate Report Designer Training Webinar. Today is Wednesday, September 18th, 2019. My name is Eric Johnson, and I will be your Windward training facilitator today. I'm a technical support engineer here at Windward Studios. I've been here well over a year now. Well, I just want to say welcome to everyone. You may have noticed that when you logged into the GoToMeeting webinar, you have a toolbar. And the arrow that you see on your screen right here is pointing to the raise your hand icon. If any time during the webinar you have a question or are experiencing technical difficulties, please feel free to click that button to ask your question or notify me of anything that's wrong. The prompts I have for questions and chat are on my other screen, so I may not see your questions immediately. Usually I wait until the Q&A session at the end to answer any questions, but I'll look now and again to see if anything has been raised. Again, this is the Intermediate Report Designer Training Webinar. So we're assuming that you haven't built, well, we're assuming that you've built maybe just some templates. They could have been very simple templates, assuming that you've installed the designer, that you know how to use the tags, that you know how to connect to your data sources. You know enough about the designer to get you started. And you may have joined us last week for the basic designer training webinar. Now, to give you an idea of the kind of machine I'm working on today, I'm using Windows 10 operating system, which is 64-bit. I'm using Office 2016, also 64-bit. And the version of Report Designer that I'm using is 16.2.0.188. There is a release after this 16.2 where the current one is 16.4, and you can find that release or any of our latest releases on our downloads webpage. Okay, I want to give you a high-level overview of what we'll be discussing today. I'll go over some advanced for each features, showing you how to group with those for each tags. We'll discuss conditional formatting, in which we'll cover two types of conditional formatting. One where we're showing and hiding content using the designer tags, and a second type of conditional formatting that formats output based on conditions. We'll also go over the equation editor, where I'll show you how to add a function to a template. We'll discuss the if and switch tags and what the differences are. I'll show you examples of the import tag. And of course, there's the Q&A session at the end of this webinar. So for the for each tag, let's review what it actually does. And it does three things. First thing it does is it grabs a set of data, any set of data that you want to pull from your data source. Second, it loops through that set of data that you selected to work with. And third thing it does is it repeats all the elements between the tags, the beginning and ending for each tags. I'll show you the importance of where to place these beginning and ending for each tags, and show you the results of placing these tags in different ways. We'll also get into grouping data or nesting for each tags, where I'll show you how to group your data using some nested for each tags. All right, well, we're now going to move away from the PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to open up a blank Word document. Okay, once it's open, I'm going to go ahead and click on the Windward Tools tab, and I'm going to click on the Samples button. And this is where we're going to begin the webinar today. So within the Samples template section, we're going to look at these tag tutorials, SQL, which are located under the additional section. These are tutorials that relate to all the tags that you can use in your template. We have these tutorials for SQL, XML, and JSON. And today we're going to focus on the SQL tutorials. And the first sample that we're going to look at is our for each tag sample template. So I'm going to go ahead and select that one, which I believe is this one. Yep. And I'm going to click on that to open up the for each tag sample. And to begin the review of this sample template, we're going to focus on this first sample example right here, the for each tag without a table. It is possible to use a for each tag without a table. As you can see right here as it's set up. And below this is a for each tag within a table, something that we went over a lot in the basic training webinar. All right, so I like to point out a couple of things here with this sample. The first thing is where you place the beginning and ending for each tags. And the second thing is why the placement is important when you loop through your data. Well, before we do anything else, let's go ahead and select this for each tag and come up to the Windward tab, and let's preview see what data we're working with. So I'm going to click the preview button. All right, so here we're returning everything from the category table. We have the category ID, the category name, the description, and the picture. We use this a lot in the beginning webinar. So what is this alt tag that's next to the for each tag? What is it going to return? So let's select that, click preview. All right, so this alt tag is just going to display the category ID from the category table, numbers 1 through 8. Now, what's this second alt tag doing? Let's go ahead and select it, click preview. Okay, this second alt tag is pulling the category name from the categories table. And here we can see beverages, condiments, confections, and so on. And then we have our end for each tag below on the next line. Well, let's go ahead and show you what the output's going to look like. I'm going to click output. Split the screen. All right. And we got the output here on the right, and the template is still over here on the left. And in the output, you'll notice we're showing you the category ID, a dash, and then the category name. And each one of these categories are ending up on its own separate line. Well, how is this actually happening? Why is it inserting the next record on a second line and not right after the first record? Well, the reason for this is that we added our N for each tag on the very next line. So there's nothing after this second out tag right here, all this white space. Then the ending for each tag is on the next line. So you can see this more clearly. I'm going to turn on the show high formatting. And now you can see that right after the last out tag is this paragraph marker right there. So what's happening is that we're actually providing a carriage return after the last out tag, so we can add our N for each tag just below it. Well, what happens if we took away that carriage return? I'm going to go ahead and delete that. So now you can see that the N for each tag is placed just after the final out tag. So what will the output look like now? Let's close this output that's already open. And let's go ahead and generate new output to see. Split the screen again. Okay, over here on the right, our output looks a bit different this time. You still see the number 1, a dash, and then beverages. And then immediately after this first record is the number 2, which starts directly after beverages, and there isn't even a space. Now you can see this over here in the template. There's the out tag, there's the dash, there's the second out tag, and after that out tag is the N for each tag without a space between the out and the N for each tag. That's why it's all now lining up on the same line for each record in the for each loop. So what it's doing, it's telling Report Designer to go back and display the next dash, the next category ID, the dash, and then the category name right next to each other. So it'll do this across the page until it reaches the margins, and then it will do it down the page as well. So this is why the output is lining up on the exact same line for each one of these categories. It's because of the placement of this N for each and the repeat of everything, including that paragraph marker through each loop through the for each tag. All right, let's go ahead and change this back. As you've just seen, it is important where you place the N for each tag. Everything between this for each tag and N for each tag, like I said, including this paragraph marker, is being repeated each time it iterates through the loop. All right, now before we move on in this sample template, I like to point out the tag tree button. And that's located within this Windward tab, and it's over here in the data section. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the tag tree button. And as you can see, it will open the tag tree over here on the right side of the screen. And this tag tree is very helpful, especially when reviewing templates that you haven't seen before, where those templates may have many tags. So what this tag tree does is it lets me know all of the tags that are in the template. So I'm going to go ahead and expand main story. Now main story is for the main portion of the document. If I add tags within the headers or footers, these would display separately. So from the tag tree, you can see that we only have tags set up in the main story right here. all these for each tags. And what we're going to do now is we're going to focus on this last for each tag, the customer loop for each tag. So to help you out when you're trying to locate a specific tag in your template, you can double click any one of these tags in the tag tree, and Designer will bring you directly to where that tag is in the template. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on this customer loop. And as you can see, I'm now down here at the bottom of the template with that customer loop for each tag selected. So again, this helps when you've never seen tags before and you're trying to locate it within the template. Now I'm going to go, now as you can see, this is expanded. I'm going to expand it a little more to open everything up so we can talk about this makeup, this for each loop makeup. So here we have our outer loop, which is our customer loop. And then there's another for each loop, and that's this inner for each loop right here. And this is connected to our outer for each loop. You can see right here. And then, so this is where we're going to talk about grouping. And also, just to point out, we have some other tags here. So we have a company name tag. This is an alt tag. Here's our inner for each tag. After that, there's an alt tag. And there's an N for each tag, which relates to this inner for each tag. And then there's another N for each tag. And this relates to our outer customers loop for each tag. And so when selecting a tag in this tag tree, you may notice down here you have a properties window, query tab. This is just a snapshot of the different properties that are associated with this for each tag. And this gives you you can edit it. You can edit these properties from this tag and even come in here and edit the query if you wanted to. So this is an easy way to edit properties of a tag without actually diving into the tag. Okay, so back to the sample over here. So what's going on? We have this outer for each tag, this customer's loop tag, and we want to group some data based on the company name. Well, let's go on and preview the customer loop just to see the data we're working with. So as you can see here, this customer loop is returning 4 records, and the records will contain the customer ID and the company name. Looks to be all companies that start with the letter A. Next thing, between this beginning and ending for each tag is the company name alt tag. So I'm going to go ahead and select that and preview it to see the data that it's going to display. So here, just as it indicates, we're just going to display the company name. Okay. Next is another for each tag, and this is our inner for each tag. Let's go ahead and preview this to see what it's going to display. All right, and as you can see, it's returning all of the orders that pertain to a specific customer ID. So let's say that you have a list of company names and you want to see all of the orders for each company name as it goes through the list. Well, this is exactly what we're doing right here in this sample. All right, let's go ahead and take a look and see what we're displaying in this alt tag. And here, it was simply just going to display the order ID. And that's all we're actually going to be displaying from this inner for each. Even though we are returning all that other information, all we're going to display is just the order ID. Now, before we move any further, let's take a look at how this will look in the output. So I'm going to click output. And I'm going to split the screen. I'm going to close our tag tree. Just give it a little more room for what we're looking at. And I'm going to scroll all the way down to the grouping for each tag example that we've been talking about. All right, right here. So we have our loop over here in the template, and over here in the output on the right, you can see the results of those two for each tag loops. So here we have the number 1, the company name, and all the orders that are associated with that company name. Then it iterates to the next company name, and it displays all of its orders. And it'll iterate again to the next company and keep on doing that until it runs out of companies and orders to display. So now let's take a closer look at that number 1 in the list. See how it's repeating the number 1 for each one of these companies? Well, here, this is where we're grouping orders under specific companies' names. So let's go ahead and take a look at the setup of this. So how did we tie this inner for each loop to this outer customer for each loop? Now, before we do anything else, let's look at the outer for each loop for a second. This one right here, this customer loop. So with it selected, up here in the for each tag properties, we can see that it's been giving a variable name of var name 10. And var name 10 is just the way the designer identifies this for each tag, this for each tag loop. So let's remember var name 10 for this for each tag. Now I'm going to select this inner for each tag, and this time I'm going to come up here and click on the wizard button. And this opens up our SQL wizard. I'm going to expand it just a little. All right, so here we have all of the columns that we're returning in this inner for each loop. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this for the moment. All right, so how do we tie this inner for each loop to this outer for each loop? Well, we do it in this filter section. And as you can see, it's already set up for us. So what we're doing is we're collecting the customer ID from the orders table, and we're checking if it's equal to the value of the var name 10 customer ID. And now remember, var name 10 is just the name for this outer for each loop. So we're having the customer ID from the orders table equal to the customer ID of the var name 10, and because they're the same column names, we can utilize these similar keys and connect the inner for each loop to the outer for each loop. Now, if I click on this drop down, if I click on this var name 10, there's a drop down over here to the right. And I'm going to expand the var name 10. And again, this is the var name 10 loop, the customer loop, and all the things that I can connect to. And of course, we've been comparing the customer ID of the inner to the outer, from the inner to the outer. All right, and when you do that, you'll notice over here when we have this set up in our data preview pane that we have our first customer ID and all the orders that pertain to that customer ID. So this is how you connect your inner for each loop, your orders customer ID, to your outer for each loop, the var name 10 customer ID. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and generate output again. And let's scroll all the way down to this example. All right. I now want to explain what is actually happening when we generate the output with the engine. And each designer has a small .NET engine built into it. So what's happening is that our engine is completely stripping out the data from our template. It's collecting that data and then rebuilding from scratch, from top down, everything that's in your template. So the output shows the data that you wanted and displays it how you formatted it within the template. So what's happening here in this example is that the designer is collecting all the data from our customer loop and all the data from within this inner for each loop, ties it all together, and then when it produces the output, it says what's after this customer loop, and the first thing that it comes across is this numbered list and the company name. Then what does it do? It sees the inner for each loop. So it grabs that data and displays the out tag from this inner for each loop. And it'll do this for all the orders, all the order IDs for the company record that we're looking at. It will loop through showing everything between this beginning and ending inner for each tag. Then, once it's done with all the orders, it'll go on to the next line where it comes across the ending for each tag. And this tells the engine to go back to the beginning of the outer loop and collect the next record and repeat the process. Iterate through the loop and repeat the process for every company name that's being listed at all their order IDs. So this just gives you an idea of how the engine is tearing down the template and rebuilding it from scratch after pulling all your data from your data source. So this is how you group your data using nested for each loops. Okay. Next thing I'd like to go over before leaving the sample is on the page above. Okay. So we've been creating for each tags using row-based formatting. We're now going to discuss how to use for each tags for column-based formatting. So there are three things that are different when you want to create columns instead of rows. This example up here is a typical example when you want to create row-based for each loop. So here we have a for each tag in the table. It's going to loop through this for each tag, displaying all of these out tags and all of the cell formatting as well. And then our end for each tag is outside of the table. This is typically what you want to do. But in our next example right here, the column-based example, the end for each tag is inside the table. Now, before we go any further, let's go ahead and preview the for each tag, just so we can see the data that it's returning. Okay, then it's returning a list of the categories. Category ID, category name, description, and picture. We're used to this one by now. Okay, so what is the out tag going to display? Let's click on that, click preview. So it's just returning the category name, beverages, condiments, and so forth. So instead of creating a list top down of category names, we're going to create columns left to right across the page. So let's take a look to see how this output looks right now. Okay, I'm going to split the screen. And I'm going to scroll all the way down to our column-based expansion. All right, here we go. So instead of going top down of the category names, we're going left to right, expanding the table, creating new columns for each of the category names. All right, so typically, when you place the N for each tag within the table, it should create a blank row, a blank new row at the very end of the list. But we're not seeing it over here in our output. Well, let's look at why that is. I'll close the output. All right, so there's a couple of ways to edit a tag. You can either double click a tag, or you can click, or once the tag is selected, you can come up to the tag section in the Windward tab and click the edit tag button. I'm going to go ahead and do that right now with the N for each tag selected. All right, so in the tag editor, there's two tabs. There's the properties tab and the queries tab. And now the N for each tag isn't used to really query anything. That's why this query tab is blank. The N for each tag just tells the designer when to stop looping through the data and repeating the elements. Now, within the properties tab, there's this delete row property, and it's set to true. And so this is why we're not showing that last blank row, because we have our delete row equal to true. Now, if I were to turn this off, just by double clicking it, it changes the value within the value that's listed, and it's now set to false. I'm going to go ahead and save this. So what is our output going to look like now? So let's go ahead and generate it. And I'm going to scroll down to this example we're talking about. And here we go. Now, before we didn't have this blank row right here, but now we do, because we turned that property, the delete row property for our N for each tag, to false. And now the last thing that you need to do for column-based expansions is to change the property value for each tag to create columns instead of rows. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on this for each tag. And this opens up our tag editor. And this is a little more robust than we saw in the tag tree, that small little snapshot at the bottom. Here we have a preview button. I can click on that and we can see the results of bringing back all the category ID, category name, description, and pictures from the category table. There's a wizard button, just like the button on the Windward tab, and you clicking this will open up the SQL wizard. There's an equation button, which I'll show you a little later, that can add an equation to a tag. Then there's the next and previous buttons. And these take you to the respective tabs without actually exiting the tag editor. Over here on the left, just like in our data bin, here's all our tables and views and stored procedures that we have access to. And on the right is our query window. And your query window is probably white. If you right-click the window, there's this color scheme option. And I am using the base 16 ocean dark. And what is normal is plain, the plain option. All right, now if I'm click on the properties tab, this is where we set column base for each. So I'm going to expand just to show you that there are some advanced properties, there's some standard properties, but we're going to focus on these tag properties right here. And in the tag property, you'll notice that there's this order option right here, and it's set to column. Now, if I were to click on this drop down, you get a list of options to choose from. Legacy, right there, is what is used by default. Legacy is much different from row. It's the original way we built the tag. The row attribute does a little more. If you want to delete a row with the end for each tag, you'll have to use this option. In our Ohana knowledge base, there is some more information on how legacy is different from row. If you want to learn more, I suggest checking that out. But since we're expanding not by rows, but by columns, we'll want to make sure columns is set for order. Now with columns set, I'll click the Save Tag button, and you can see the output as it is here, creating columns. All right. Now I'm going to change this back, change back the changes that we've made. Now go ahead and double click the end for each tag. Go to the Properties tab, and I'm going to change this delete row attribute back to true. I'm going to save it, and let's click Output, say yes, and now we should not see that extra blank row. Okay, sorry about that. Let's scroll down. All right. Now we don't see that blank row anymore. So 3 things for column-based expansion. First thing is to make sure your for each tag is set to column, and the end for each tag is within the table, and the delete row attribute for the end for each tag is set to true. All right, let's go back to our slides. Well, we talked about legacy, row, column for each tag types. We talked about the delete row attribute, which deletes the row where the end for each tag is placed. And we have over 50 equations or functions available for you to use. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of them. So I have a sample template that we're going to discuss now. So I'm going to open that up. It's opened on my other screen, so let's slide this over and expand this. All right, so in this template, we're going to add a sum function to create a total of the sales amount for the list of our salespeople. Now you can see we have a sales table already set up. Here's our for each tag. We have a couple of alt tags for the salesperson, call nums, leads generated, sales amount. All right, now before we do anything, let's go ahead and take a look at the sales loop. I'm going to select that, and as you can see here, before I do that, our end for each tag is outside the table. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to go up to the Windward tab, and I'm going to preview. So this for each tag is just returning what looks to be the same things that we're showing in our alt tags: salesperson, call nums, leads generated, and sales amount. Now, before we add the sum function, I want to show you how to conditionally format text by displaying red text for those salespeople not meeting their quota. Say you had a requirement to do this. I'll show you how this can be done. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on this sales amount alt tag right here. This will open up our tag editor. And I'm going to expand this var name 1 in the data tree. And var name 1 is just the variable that's related to this sales loop right here. And as you can see, it's returning the salesperson, calls num, leads generated, sales amount, and ID. All right, now let's open up the Properties tab. And in this tag section, there's this condition field right here, this condition property. I'm going to expand this just so you can see it better. And as you can see, there is already an equation set up for us. And now when you notice that when I clicked on this condition field, the ellipsis is over here at the end of the line. I'm going to go ahead and click on this. And this opens up our conditional formatting rule manager. So whenever you add an equation or whenever you want to evaluate data, you want to begin that query with an equal sign, as you can see right here. So we got our equal sign, and then we got a $ and squiggly bracket, which indicates a variable. We're looking at the sales amount from var1. var1 is just the variable name of the sales loop. And we're checking if that sales amount is less than 8,000. All right, now that we have our equation built, what if I want to format the results in a certain way? Now, if I know the formatting code, I can add the syntax right here. As you see, it's already populated. But if you're not familiar with that syntax, you can click on the wizard button, and this opens up our format options window. And here you have an option to, format the text by italicizing it, bolding it, underlining it, striking through it. You can change the text color. You can even change the text color in the background. Since we're working with the table here, we also have options to format the table cell. You can change the border, line style, the line color, cell color, and even the alignment. But for this example, we're just going to change the text to a color red, and you can see that's what's been entered here. This is the hex code for the color red. We do not have a color palette at this point, unfortunately. That's something we want to add as an option. But for now, you would just need to enter in the hex code. And for red, it's 2 Fs and 4 zeros. So this is exactly what we want to do. We want to format our text to be red for specific condition. So I'm going to click OK. And then here's our formatting right here. Now, if I wanted to, I could add a new rule as well. If I didn't need it, I could delete a rule. But this is all we want to do, is show text in red for those sales amounts less than $8,000. So with this all set up, I'm going to click OK. I would save the tag. And now when we click output, let's see what this conditional formatting looks like. Split the screen. I'm going to turn off the show high formatting. There we go. It just looks a little nicer now. So you can see here that any sales amount that is less than $8,000 is displayed in red. So this is one way to conditionally format an alt tag for output. All right, let's close this output for a moment. So now let's go ahead and add a sum function to this table. So what if we just wanted to total up all the sales amounts for all our salespeople from this table? How can we do this? Well, one way we can do this by adding a new row in our table underneath our first row right here. So I'm going to go ahead and select this for each tag and delete it. All right. I'm now going to add a new blank row to this table by clicking on that plus sign right there. So now we're going to do what I told you not to do earlier when it comes to row-based templates. And this is row-based template as we're moving top down. And what I'm going to do is now I'm now going to add our end for each tag inside the table. So I'll place my cursor right here in the second row, go up to tags, and add the end for each tag right there in the table. All right, since we're going to display the total of the sales amount, let's go ahead and give this a heading. So let's call this total. All right, and let's go ahead and format this. So I want to select this. Let's go to home. Let's make that bold, and let's right justify it. All right. So now we want to add our alt tag right next to this total label. So place my cursor in the sales amount column. And I'm going to go to the Windward tab, click on the tags, and add an alt tag. All right, so now that our alt tag is in our table, I'm going to double click on it to open up the tag editor. And now this time, from the tag editor, I'm going to click on the equation button. And this opens up our insert function equation window. So here we have a bunch of different categories. You can see we can show you just the date and time, equations, the math and trig, the statistical, database, text, logical, so forth. Since we want to display a sum, we're going to go ahead and select the math and trig category. And now these are the different functions that are listed within the math and trig category. It's listed in alphabetical order. I'm going to scroll down to sum. All right. And when I select it, you'll notice down here there's a description of the function, adds all the numbers in a range of values. That's exactly what we want. So I'm going to click OK. And this opens up our function arguments window. And here is our equation. And as I mentioned earlier, we always start with an equal sign to evaluate, and which it has already done for us. And then there's our sum function, and with nothing between the parentheses. So let's go ahead and add to this equation. We're going to add what we're going to sum up. So you could enter in that value right here in the number 1 field, or you could click on the wizard button. I'm going to do that, and this opens up our SQL select wizard. I expand the tables and the sales table, since that's the table we're working with. So we want to take the sales amount and total it up. All right, well, to do that, you would select the sales amount and drag it to columns. So now over here in the data preview, we have all our sales amounts, exactly what we want to sum up. So that's all you need to do, is just simply drag the sales amount to the columns section and then click OK. And now you'll notice to the right of the number 1 field is the first value that's being returned. And there's also the grand total down here, not formatted, just the grand total. And now our sum function has data in it. Here you can see in our SQL query that we're pulling the sales amount from the sales table. This is exactly what we want to see. So I'm going to click OK. Here's our query that we built through the equation editor, even with the equal sign at the beginning. We're going to save that tag. Now, the last thing that we want to do, since this out tag is going to display some sort of number, a currency value, is that we want to format that data. So with these out tags selected, I'm going to come up here and click the Format Data button. So just like in Excel, we can format the number to be a currency. We want 2 decimal places, negative numbers. Okay, just like that. That's the formatting we want, so we can apply it. We can close this. And let's also bold this. So I'm going to click on this tag. I'm going to come up here, select the tag to make sure that the formatting is applied to the whole tag, and go home and bold this. All right, now let's generate the output to see what the results of adding this sum function will display. Okay, here's our table with the extra row. Since we added that n for each tag within the table, it's given us this blank row, but we utilized that blank row by adding the grand total for the sales amount right here. Okay, so I think this is a good example for showing you how to conditionally format text values, format text for certain values, and also adding a sum function to your template. One of the many functions within the equation editor that you can utilize. All right. Okay, I've got a couple more things to show you here. Running just a little late, but we got just a couple more samples to go over. Hope you'll stick around, get some good information out of it. Okay, I'll show you another sample template. So let's go back to the Windward tools. Let's click samples. Now I want to show you conditionally formatting using if tags and also the switch case tags. This time, let's go ahead and open the if tutorial first, right here. So this sample just gives you step-by-step instructions on how to utilize the if tag. Just shows you what it's going to do. So let's look at this first example here, this if out and end if tag example. Now the if tag is perfect when you want to show or hide specific elements within your template based on some condition within your data. So I'm going to go ahead and select this if tag right here, And so what it's going to do is this if tag is going to evaluate. And if the evaluation of it is true, then it will display everything between this beginning and ending if tags. Now, which right now is just an L tag. If this evaluates to false, it would skip over everything between the beginning and ending if tags and display everything after it. So it would skip displaying this L tag. All right, let's take a look at this beginning if tag. Let's see what we're actually evaluating here. So back to the Windward tab, click preview. Okay, so in this if tag, we're just evaluating if 1 is less than 2. This is just a simple evaluation. Obviously, your templates will contain much more detailed evaluations. But for this one, we're just checking if 1 is less than 2. Since 1 is less than 2, this is going to return true. So this means that we're going to display this alt tag right here. If this was false, it would have skipped this alt tag and gone on to the next thing after this end for each tag. Now let's look at the alt tag, see what we're actually going to display. With it selected, click the preview. All right, and so since this if tag evaluates to true, this alt tag is going to display 1 is less than 2. Okay. Let's go ahead and take a look at the output. All right, so there it is. We're now displaying in simple text, 1 is less than 2. All right, let's now look at the next example. The output here is indicating that 3 is less than or equal to 4. But why is it showing this? Let's go ahead and preview this if tag. All right, all we're doing here is evaluating if 3 is greater than 4. Of course, 3 is not greater than 4, so it evaluates to false. Since this if tag is evaluating to false, what Report Designer does is that it skips this first alt tag and moves to this else tag. And it will then provide you everything after this else tag all the way to the ending if tag. Right now it's just a simple alt tag, but it could be used to show or hide text, tables, multiple paragraphs, just about anything. So it doesn't matter what comes between the if and end if tags. We're just going to show or hide certain elements of your template based on this condition evaluation. All right, since this if tag evaluates to false, if we were to preview this alt tag after this else tag, let's see what it's going to display. And here it's saying 3 is less than or equal to 4. And this is exactly what we see right here in our output. So if the if tag was to evaluate to true, this if tag was to evaluate to true, this alt tag would display instead. Let's go ahead and select it and preview it. And here we would have seen the text 3 is greater than 4. We don't see that because this does not evaluate to true. So that's the if tag. You'll want to use the if tag if you have 1 or 2 conditions or choices that you want to evaluate. But what if you have 3 or more conditions that you want to evaluate? Well, you can do that with nested if tags as you can see right here, here we have an if tag, an else tag, another if tag, an else tag, and the two ending if tags. But instead of using nested if tags, we suggest using the switch case tags. Now we're going to take a quick look at the switch case tags. I'm going to close that. Let's go to Windward Tools, and this will be the last sample we'll talk about today. And again, down here in the tag tutorials SQL, we're going to open up the switch case tags. There's a couple of them. We're going to use this second one right here. So here we have another table containing what looks to be customer information. All right, let's go ahead and preview this customers for each tag, see what data it's returning. All right, here we can see customer ID, title, first name, middle. A lot more data is being returned than what looks to be displayed in the table. And in our table here, we're just going to do the first name, last name, address, city, state, postal code, and country. And this country column is where we're going to discuss switch case tags. And as you can see, it's already been added for us here. And now all the switch tag does is it just tells the designer when to start evaluating case tags. So here's our switch tag, and here's our ending switch tag right here. And our switch tags are just a little bit darker than the case tags. The next thing next thing after the switch tag is our case tags right here. And these case tags are evaluating the country. So it's checking if the country is Canada, then the Canadian flag will be displayed. If US, then the US. If Mexico, then the Mexican flag. And if Australia, then display the Australian flag. Well, let's look at the value we're evaluating right here in this Canada case tag. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on this Canada case tag, and it'll open up our tag editor. All right, right here. So we have our equal sign. We have var1, and this just refers to our customers loop. And then we're checking if the country region name is equal to Canada. If it is, then we'll want to display the Canadian flag. We'll then do this for the rest of these countries, and if the country region name equals one of the case tags condition, then it will show that specific flag. And as soon as it meets one of those cases in the case tags, it's going to exit the switch tag. Move on to the next line, which is this N for each tag, and it's going to then loop again through the next record, showing all these alt tag information and only the flag, the specific flag for the country. So let's go ahead and look at the output to see what this looks like. All right, and you can see the first record is John Yang, and it looks like the country region they belong to is Australia, so we display the Australia name. We have some others down here. Looks like Lauren Walker. The country region is US, so it's displaying the American flag, and so forth and so on. So only one flag is being displayed. So here we're evaluating 4 case tags. So there's 4 questions or conditions that we're asking to show or hide certain values based on the customer's country. Right now, we're just showing a hiding a flag image for each record. All right, and that was the sample, the switch case sample. Oh, no, I actually forgot. There's one more sample I want to show you. It's a quick one. It's the import tag. So let's show you that real fast. So I'm going to go back to Windward Tools, Samples, and let's see, where is that? Oh, here it is, right here. Import tag. All right. So this sample right here just has a bunch of different imports. Here we're importing an image. Here we're importing a PDF, DOCX. We're importing text, an HTML page. We're importing a whole bunch of different stuff into this one document. So let's just go ahead and take a look at the output to see what these import tags are actually importing. So I'm going to click Output. This output seems to be a little slow when I'm on the webinar. It's a lot faster on my machine, but I think the webinar slows some processing down. Oh, here we go. Let's split the screen. All right. Now the first thing in the output is our imported image right here. And what you see over here in the template is just an image preview. This is actually a tag. So if I was to double click on it, it'll open up the tag editor. And here you can see my query for this image is to the location of this Windward 2 PNG file. So we're showing you the preview here in the template so you can see the image size and see how it's going to lay out in your output. You may have noticed that this importing PDF file section, we're supposed to import a PDF document, but it's not displayed here. And that's because the only way that you can import PDF is by outputting to PDF. So if you were to output to PDF instead of what I did here to DOCX, this would display this PDF import. So anytime you're trying to import PDF, you have to output to PDF. All right, that's the last of the examples I wanted to talk about. Let's go back to the slides just to make sure I haven't missed anything. Okay, I showed you the if tag and how to evaluate when it's true. It shows everything between the beginning and ending if tags. If you have multiple evaluations or conditions that you're trying to check against, for instance, 3 or more, you'll want to use the switch case tags. Then you may want to take a screenshot of this slide while we're on it, if you can. Here are some great resources that you can utilize. The Windward User Center is the central page for everything Windward support. Here you'll find links to our knowledge-based resources, training videos, template libraries, and more. If you want to look up anything from our knowledge base, you can do this at ohana.windwardstudios.com. If you can't find what you're looking for, you can reach out to our amazing support team at support.windwardstudios.com, or you can email them at support@windwardstudios.com. So if you have a question that you can't find the answer to, go ahead and contact our support team. If you want to retrieve your license keys, you can do this at store.windward.net. And if you want any changes or have any feature requests that you want to see added to the designer or any of the engines, you can do this at ideas.windward.net. All right, well, there's going to be a survey at the end of this webinar. Please feel free to fill it out truthfully. This is the end of the webinar right now. Thank you for joining. I hope you got a lot out of this, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Okay, goodbye now.